Welcome back to Dano Does Things. Today I'm going to show you how to make any landscape photo into a cool abstract watercolor painting. Alright, to get the template to follow for this watercolor picture, I'm going to start with my iPad here. All you need is the iPad and Procreate, and it's going to be easier if you have an Apple Pencil. So what works best for this kind of watercolor abstract, I find, is landscapes that have quite a bit of different colorations to them. So I added a few to this album here that I really liked, ones that I've taken myself over the years, but I think I'm gonna go with this one right here. I really like the colors and the contrast, and I think it's gonna turn out really nice. So let's get that into Procreate. All right, now we have our image open in Procreate, and what we're going to do is create a grid. So you're going to want to go under the wrench right here, and then turn on Drawing Guide. And then once you have Drawing Guide on, you want to click Edit Drawing Guide. Now, this is where you're going to want to play with it a little bit. Depending on how big you want your piece and how detailed you want your piece is going to depend on the grid size. So I'm going to go for a fairly small grid this time. Maybe something like that. I also like to turn up the opacity of the grid lines because you need to follow those, and it's easier if you can actually see them. So we've got our grid there. We'll click Done. Now you want to be on your picture layer, so you will be affecting this actual picture layer, so just keep that in mind. And you're going to want to use the blur tool or the smudge tool. I like to use this oil paint one. I find that it works really well in this situation. So all you're going to do is take this and go within each square of your grid and smear it around a little. For some of them, you're not really going to see a difference, but once you start getting each square filled in, you're going to start really seeing the difference between colors. So here you'll see it goes from a really dark blue to a lighter blue, and now we're getting into green. So you're going to just keep doing that for each square so that you get this sort of amalgamated pattern of colors. And it's going to look a little like this in the end. This is sort of what you're going to get when you are done swirling on each square with your smudge tool. And now you can see each square has a different color, and we're going to use that to mix our watercolors. Now I have a large sheet of watercolor paper, and I'm going to transfer my grid onto the paper. So I'm going to be doing 1/2 inch squares. So starting from one edge, I'll go in and measure 1/2 inch up and put a light pencil line. Then we're going to go from that pencil line and do 1/2 inch up from that. Then we're going to continue all the way across the paper, and you're going to go the opposite direction as well. So 1/2 inch up from the other side. And 1/2 inch up. And eventually you're going to make this grid pattern all over your paper, like so. It might be a little hard to see because I tried to do it quite light, but you can see that there's this now 1/2 inch grid on my whole piece of paper. Now is the time to reference your grid that you made here and count how many squares you have across and how many squares you have up and down. So mine is 10 squares by 14 squares. So what I'm going to do on the paper is measure out 10 squares by 14 squares, but I also want a bit of a edge around it. So I'm going to measure out 11 by 15. And I'm just going to cut out that section of the grid. All right, now I have my grid ready to go. I can even lighten up some of these pencil lines even more, and then we can get started with painting. Okay, it's now time to start painting. I'm going to be using my iPad drawing as reference, so we might as well start up in this corner. So I'm going to try to mix a watercolor that matches this dark blue color in the corner here. It's going to be important to have scrap paper on hand so you can test out your colors before you put them on your grid. This is a great way to practice some color theory as well. Now, once you have a color that you like, you can use a brush that's about the same size as your square to sort of fill in the squares, but I find that can get messy, so I'm better with just a regular paintbrush like this, a regular watercolor brush. So I'm gonna go in and start. I had matched the top right square, so let's start with that one. Now, because you want the squares to be distinct and you don't want the colors to be bleeding into each other, you don't want to paint the very next square, even if it's going to be the same color, which this one is. Instead, I'm going to skip over and do this one here, and we can come back and do this one once these dry a little bit. And just as we're not painting the ones directly beside it, we're also not going to paint the ones directly below it. So you can even go offset and do these squares next, or you can even just skip down a full section and start doing those to make sure those get lots of time to dry and you're not going to get a lot of bleeding. But let's go and fill in all these squares. You can always bounce around your grid if you have colors that look similar. For example, I have this color and then this color is quite similar. So that's the bottom square and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up, and we're gonna do that square in the same color. You can go out of order. It really doesn't matter as long as you fill in the squares eventually and you aren't painting directly next to a wet square. This is very much like creating your own paint by numbers, and I find it to be incredibly soothing. And here is the photo with the watercolor recreation. I just love how this turned out. It's very abstract, it's very modern, and it gives you a way to display a picture of maybe an important place or somewhere that you really love, but in a sort of different kind of style than just printing off a picture and putting it up. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. I had a ton of fun making it. If you do make it, please tag me on Instagram at DanoDoesThings. And as always, follow me here on YouTube to get more ideas, inspiration, and tutorials. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.